Let's go deeper. This book came out only 10 years after Julian Jaynes's book in 1976 on the origins of the breakdown in consciousness of the bicambrial mind. This does actually relate a lot to agential theory, and it appears to have influenced Minsky in his A-brains, B-brains postulate. In it, the A-brain, as in the animal body, inhabits the world and doesn't have another sort of super thing that's governing it. The B-brain doesn't have a direct connection to the world. It can only observe what the A-brain is doing and control the A-brain. So the A-brain is receiving quite a lot of signals, and that's largely what it's processing, and so it doesn't have time for something called conscious thought. B-brain only really sees one set of signals, and those are the reduced signals that A-brain takes into itself. So B-brain mostly focuses on making sure that A-brain doesn't get caught up in loops. A lot of people separate their animal body from their conscious mind. And in fact, a lot of people think of the voice inside of their head as really them, and then their body as not them. A lot of people want to equate this immediately with the right and left hemisphere theory. In reality, different parts on your brain are responsible for different things. And if you lost one side of your brain, the other part of your brain would take over some of those functions and activities. And it doesn't really matter which side of your brain you lose. And so this kind of tells us that both of them are full brains. We know because we've done this. We've done this enough times that we have statistically significant evidence that there is like a difference between when it's performed early and late in life. It does show that connectivity between networks increases. This does really impact the problem solving of two agents though. In communicative agents for software development, we have seen experimental evidence that having multiple agents checking each other and some inhibiting or exciting activity in other elements of the system is a better problem-solving process. Minsky lays out a few examples. If the A-brain appears disordered and confused, inhibit that activity. B rewards A through reinforcement learning. B can refocus A when A starts to get distracted. So if you think of the language center of your brain, that part of you that talks to you in your head as the B brain, and the part of you that experiences the world as the A brain, that's generally, I think, what the bicambrial theory got to. There have been a whole lot of studies about this recently, and this paper is one of those big unifying papers. It summarizes and delineates different interpretations. It seeks to rigorously answer the split brain consciousness problem. Is consciousness unified or not? The paper concludes that the jury is still out and there's not enough evidence either way. Not because of statistical significance, but because we don't have the experimental techniques to validate subjective experience. This gets back to subject unity, which is if all the experiences that happen to a system belong to a single subject. So if it can be said that it happened to your left brain, but it didn't happen to your right brain, then they're separate subjects. But generally, this is not the case. But is the experience of subject unity there in split brain patients? We actually do not know. So generally, neuroscientists seem like they've kind of settled on two camps. One is integrated information theory, and the other is global workspace theory. Because integrated information theory kind of says that everything's a little bit conscious, we kind of ignore this when we're trying to figure out where the borderline of consciousness is or isn't. Because this just says that there isn't one. Which is not to say that either one is correct. It's just that if you want to find where the border is, it doesn't help to say that there isn't one. There is some evidence to suggest that split brain patients do have some communication happening between the two hemispheres. They can guess about whether or not a line is continued. They have a hard time integrating visual, symbolic things, though. It appears that perception is really more split, whereas response is a unified thing. So it's not really enough to say whether or not there are two agents there or not. It could be that there's an A and B brain, or it could really just be processing delays. This came out in 2020, and a lot of the research came out in the last 5 years before that, and so there's a lot of textbooks that still just say the other thing. They also note a lot of the differences here come down to the fact that everybody still has subcortical processing, and that unifies input between both the right and left hemispheres of the brain. So there are other bridges. This paper lays out that basically there are a lot of unanswered questions, and that no, neuroscience has not come up with an answer to consciousness. Some people have even suggested non-whole numbers of conscious agents, basically getting into the idea that identity may not be an actual discrete quantity, but instead a gradient. They go on to say, if evidence for this is found, the implications go beyond split-brain patients. It would suggest our intuitions on the indivisibility of the experiential self are mistaken. I think internal family systems really gets into agential theory in terms of consciousness, and it's a powerful psychological model that helps a lot of people emotionally. So it may have some biological basis as well. Consciousness as a continuum is basically what integrated information theory is. The last sentence kind of gets more into Minsky's theory. Agents share all experiences, but consciousness is to some degrees unified and some degrees not. Minsky's work answers the question of why our brains might have done this, what the utility of having multiple agents really is. Because when you have one agent that can inhibit or excite the other, then you don't tend to get trapped in holes. Neuroscience is not really caught up with this idea. The therapists have figured it out. Internal family systems argues that essentially we spawn a whole bunch of agents as a child, basically based on the people who are around us. And then we keep copies of those people around to kind of keep us going. But sometimes those copies are a little bit messed up, so we gotta figure them out. It's not that you have to fix your parent, it's that you have to fix the agent that represents your parent within you. It's a sub-feature of cognitive behavioral therapy, because cognition is a series of behaviors. And a glance at the study seems like it's effective, but I'm not a doctor or a therapist or doctor. This is not medical advice. It's really just about consciousness agents theory.